Okay, but you do see the FTX fallout leading to tremendous regulation.
That's right.
And you did make the point that you think that perhaps it was a controlled demolition. Before we get into what kind of regulation you expect, let's break down that idea. You had a LinkedIn post recently where you suggested that the deep state orchestrated the FTX collapse in an effort to, and I'm quoting you, capture the crypto industry and bring it under government control. You're not the first person to have this view. We've spoken to several people. We had Mark Yusko, for example, on the show. He has a very similar thesis that Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of FTX, is a useful idiot in what he called an elegant takedown of the crypto industry, that he's a pawn in all of this. Let's hear your thoughts. What do you mean by it was a controlled demolition?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of coincidences, and ultimately when there's too many coincidences, there must be something there that, as they say, where there's smoke, there's fire sort of a thing. And so a lot of these could be coincidental and some could be serious, but again, collectively they add up to a lot. So if you look back from the beginning, this one's maybe more on the coincidental side, but FTX was founded within weeks of Biden announcing that he was running for office. That one's probably a little bit more on the coincidental side. And then, of course, FTX became Biden's second largest donor behind George Soros, which is no freedom lovers fan. And so they became the second largest donor. We know that he gave about $40 million to midterms to Democratic parties this year, and he had committed or pledged or hoped to give up to $1 billion in the next election. And so it became this
dangling that carrot, yeah.
Dangling that carrot. And then we can go deeper, right? So it's like, who are his parents? So both of his parents are law professors, and not just law professors, but tax law professors. His father actually wrote legislation for Elizabeth Warren. Oh, coincidentally, who's the one passing this new Digital Asset Anti-Money Laundering Act. So his father did that, and his father wrote multiple papers on why we need to get rid of cash, right? So his father is in the government already writing legislation about banning cash, and his mother is also tax law as well. But then also his parents collectively are what's called bundlers, which means they're in Silicon Valley meeting with their buddies and collecting money, bundling money together to donate to super PACs. So they're very involved in politics, into the Democratic Party, and in influencing cash, business, and tax and policy and things like that, even writing legislation for Elizabeth Warren. So there's some stuff there. Then we saw that he became a partner with the World Economic Forum. Now, that's another coincidence, but these coincidences start adding up. Mm-hmm. We also see that his aunt also works for the World Economic Forum, and not just World Economic Forum, but also Johns Hopkins University, which was involved in the Pandemic 201, which was the test that happened right before the whole world went into lockdown, which is another coincidence. His brother also started a fund and a super PAC to raise money in conjunction with the World Economic Forum to prevent the next pandemic. So I think it was like $18 million was spent on pandemic stuff, and they were hoping to stop the next one. So you have this deep connection and family ties from his brother, his aunt, the World Economic Forum, Johns Hopkins University, the pandemic, his parents, the bundlers, and it goes on. So then, of course, Caroline, who was the CEO of Alameda, her father taught at MIT, and he was Gary Gensler's boss.
Yeah.
It just kind of keeps on going. Now, we see a lot of people coming out of MIT that end up in similar situations like this, like almost like MIT could be some sort of a recruiting center. And so we can keep going.
There was also the interesting connection with Ukraine.
Yeah, and there's Ukraine.
Yeah. Yep. Elaborate on that one, how FTX facilitated donations to Ukraine.
Yeah, so then people wanted to donate money. Everybody wanted to support the current thing. And so they said, hey, we'll donate cryptocurrency. And so Sam Bankman-Fried said, fine, we'll set this up. We'll collect the cryptocurrency. We'll deliver it. Now, there's some shady stuff there as well, coincidental maybe. But what happened is as soon as Sam Bankman-Fried got into trouble, they took him off of the website. They started changing the website. But of course, the Wayback Machine, it keeps the archives of all the web pages. So what we can see is that, it's been a while since I reported on this, but I believe they had reported $70 million in donations, and then they updated the website to say that they had only received $60 million in donations, and then they updated the website to say that they had given out, I believe, $53 million in donations. So there's about a $16 million that are missing out of this. that are gone based off of the updates they had put on the website. So there's some interesting things there as well. And of course, you know, the fraud and theft and grift that goes through Ukraine is long documented. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of connections there.
Some very interesting coincidences, as you say. There's no proof, of course, just some tenuous connections, some very odd ties between parties here. But now we have SBF arrested. Does that negate the theory, or
I think it only makes it worse. I think it only makes it worse.
Okay, go on.
Because a couple things. So one, back to SBF. So, you know, he built a $30 billion company in 3 years. Him alone, like he didn't have any help doing this. And then this money, he was buying his way into Washington to create all this new legislation. So he was the one championing all this legislation. Okay, so then let's jump into he got arrested. Now, he was supposed to appear before Senate to give testimony.
Yeah.
And nobody was moving on this. I mean, calls all over the internet for like, why isn't he arrested? Why is he still a free man? They need to take him into custody right now. But yet he's on book tours and he's giving podcast talks and this and that. Well, he was scheduled to speak before a committee to give his testimony, and the day before he was supposed to do that, they grabbed him. Could that be another coincidence?
Right.
Like they don't want to hear what he's going to say? Could he be implicating some people? We know the Jeffrey Epsteins and the like of that world, they never get a chance to publicly talk. And so he disappeared right before that happened. And when I say disappeared, he waived his right to be sent up to the United States.
Extradition.
Extradition. Sorry, I'm drawing the blank on that. So he waived his right on that, which means that could have been like about a 3-year, potentially it takes about a couple of years, up to 3 years to maybe get him extradited to the U.S. That's how stories die. That's how stories don't get told, right? I don't mean him dying, but, you know, over a couple of years, that thing just fades away. Now, all of a sudden today, it looks like he got brought into the hospital for some mystery illness. And so I would say the coincidences only keep piling up. It doesn't get more clear.
Yeah, this is a very mysterious story as it continues to unravel, and a lot more suspicious elements coming out. Again, the idea is that perhaps he is a pawn in this, a useful idiot to bring down the crypto sector at large. Just speculation.
Just speculation.
Just speculation, but an interesting theory to pass nonetheless. But if the end game is regulation, now that, you know, we, as you say, the will of the people, everybody is now horrified that this could have happened. Regulators march in with indignation. What kind of regulation do you expect that comes out of this now?
Let's talk about the first piece, which again is just coincidental because apparently his father is a tax law professor who's been writing papers on ending cash and wrote legislation for Elizabeth Warren. He was using this money to get into Washington to help write legislation. And what's the first piece? Oh, it comes from Elizabeth Warren. Oh, just another coincidence. And it's called the Digital Asset Anti-Money Laundering Act. Now, what's interesting about this bill is, of course, you know, these bills don't just get put together in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. These things are written well in advance. And so the timing of it coming out, as well as, like I said, the person who put it out and the previous ties to his father are pretty shady. But this Digital Asset Anti-Money Laundering Act by Senator Warren and Marshall is a direct attack on personal freedom, privacy, and crypto users. And it would have done, of course, like most laws, would have done nothing to prevent the next FTX. And basically what they want to do is they want to say that any software that's related to cryptocurrency would basically be banned because every piece of software would have to collect KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering, information on everybody. So if I'm a coder and I write a piece of DeFi code and transactions go through my code, somehow that code is supposed to capture that. And they want that to apply all the way even to private wallets. And so, of course, the big innovation with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is that I can custody my own assets. I can go in the App Store. I could download any number of apps and create wallets to start storing my coins. And they would want even that to be regulated. So all of this would have this KYC kind of situation on it. And the problem is that we have this brand new, as I call it, technological revolution, this brand new technology that we don't know where it's going to go. It's so early now. It's like saying electricity, the first application of electricity was the light bulb. But of course, electricity is used for a lot more than a light bulb today. And so they're trying to take this brand new technology and say, well, it must do these things like capture KYC and ML through these checkpoints. Well, it's impossible. Who's Elizabeth Warren? Does she know how to write cryptocurrency code? Of course not. So she's saying, well, it should do this, but it's not possible. Well, if it's not possible and it's a law, then that means you can't do it. And so this is probably the most restrictive one that could potentially really hamstring, shut down the entire cryptocurrency industry if passed.
Right. That's a big if. And as you say, the know your customer requirements at every single step of any kind of transaction would be like death by 1,000 cuts. It would just bring the sector to a grinding halt in many ways. But because you mentioned that SBF's father was involved to some degree with writing this legislation, is that to say that you think that that they're in on it? Like the theory that I've heard is that, again, that they're pawns, that they didn't know that they would be used in this way to bring down the whole sector. But do you think that perhaps, again, just a theory, just speculation, do you think that there is sort of some collusion, that they knew that there would be this collapse and that regulation would come as a result of it?
So first of all, just to clarify, I said that SPF's father had previously written legislation for Elizabeth Warren. Okay. I didn't say he wrote this piece.
All right.
And I don't have any reason to believe or deny that. I don't know that about this piece, but he did previously. But as far as your second question, I think everybody's useful idiots. I mean, there's some people pulling strings high up. They're playing, this proverbial 4D chess kind of a thing. But I would say that the Sam Bankman-Frieds, his father, maybe even Elizabeth Warren are probably the useful idiots in this. And I think there's something much bigger. We saw another thing, and I don't have the exact details with me, but, it came out that he had bought this bank. And
yes.
I don't know if you saw a little picture. It's like a little 800 square foot building, this little bank. And that bank has deep ties with known intelligence assets like Deltec, for example. And so there's deep ties into the intelligence community, which also has ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And so I think it goes deeper than that. I think there's someone pulling bigger strings. And yes, to answer your question, I would agree. I think SBF is probably just a useful idiot here.
So this bank has ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
To the intelligence community, which tie all the way back to that. Yeah, Whitney Webb has really put together a very compelling string of events with all the ties and dates and amounts and everything that ties all this together. And so, again, we have no smoking gun here, but we have lots of coincidences.